Hi, and welcome back to this Wednesday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Number to call if you want to join the program, 888-589-8840. Let's take a quick call from Ruby to start this segment. Ruby in Texas. Welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Ruby, what's on your mind? Ruby, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, go right ahead. What's on your mind?
Okay, I wanted to say something about a couple of things you said. The plane that went down.
Yes, ma'am.
Back when that happened, we were having military maneuvers. And they thought it got shot down by one of our own missiles from the ships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that would, that would seem to be a pretty big stretch for me.
They saw something pretty big going through the air. I mean, some people even had pictures of it.
Well, and this documentary that's coming out this week, I think he's got some radar images that indicate the explosion or whatever was happened outside the craft. So again, these investigators were very careful. They wouldn't even suggest, they're so careful, they wouldn't even suggest what they think the cause was. All they're saying is that the explosion happened outside the aircraft. So we'll have to see. I think a lot of people are going to be interested to see what some of those details are. All right, Ruby, thank you very much. And again, my suspicion would be, again, we don't have any concrete evidence one way or another, but I would strongly suspect this may have had something to do with Islamic terrorism. You know, we had the USS Cole not long after that. You had the World Trade Center bombing in 1993. You had 9/11 just 5 years after this. I mean, we already had concerted efforts to strike American interest, Muslims striking American interest prior to that plane going down. Now, back to the illegal immigration issue just for a moment. Remember, the main thing to understand about this CBO bill is don't let them lie to you about this. They're going to tell you this proves that it's good for the economy. This thing only goes 10 years out. Even if this thing is penciled up like they draw it out, the real impact on you and me and the American taxpayer is not going to be until at least 13 years out. That's why it's just like what Obama did with Obamacare. I mean, this is just basically Marco Rubio's version of Obamacare. This is a bill that's over 1,000 pages now. It weighs 24 pounds. It's an absolute monstrosity. It has more waivers in it for the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security per page, more waivers per page than Obamacare gave to Kathleen Sebelius. So this has more waivers for Janet Napolitano. She can let any illegal alien she wants stay in the country no matter what their criminal record is. She's got waivers. She can provide a waiver for any illegal alien criminal. And we've had story after story after story about people who have been killed, have been murdered, have been run over by drunk illegal alien drivers. I mean, American people are dying because we do not have a secure border. But Janet Napolitano can let these people walk free if she chooses. Now, I was struck by this because I remember these days very well. My son played Little League Baseball. He was an all-star and all that kind of stuff. And what Little League has really strict rules. In other words, you know, your birthday has to be within certain parameters for you to be eligible to play Little League Baseball. If you were born outside the window of time, you're not eligible. You're too old to play Little League Baseball. And, of course, at that age, because of how rapidly boys develop at that age, at 11, 12, 13, you do not want a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old playing in a league that's designed for 11 and 12-year-olds. So they have got very strict documentation records. And here's a piece on a website today called The Lonely Conservative. And he writes about his own 12-year-old son making the Little League All-Star team this year. And, of course, because of the competition, to keep it fair, you got to have all this documented so people aren't older, boys aren't older than they say they are. So you got to verify their age and their residency. That becomes important because the way Little League is set up is it's set up by geography. They take a population base, I don't know, like 30,000 people or something like that, and then they try to have one Little League team for every 30,000 people. So, and they have to live within that geographical district. So what you have to do, if your son wants to play Little League Baseball on the All-Star team, you have to bring, number one, your son's original birth certificate. Can't be a copy. It's got to be the original. I remember we had to order one for JD to play an American Legion ball. We couldn't find his. We had to order up a certified birth certificate in order so that he was proven eligible to play in an American Legion tournament. So, I mean, you can get them. This is not a big problem. We had the same issue with Debbie getting a passport for her when we went to Canada last year so we could attend my son's wedding. I performed the wedding, which is a great honor and all that. It took a passport to get us into Canada. She didn't have a passport. We had to send to Guam to get a birth certificate, and we got one. Took a little while, but you can get them. This is not impossible to do. But you want to play Little League Baseball, you got to show up with your son's original birth certificate. You have to bring a copy of your son's birth certificate, and you have to bring 4 documents, 4, to prove your residency, to prove that you live in the district for whom your son is playing, because they don't want Little League teams poaching outside their district to kind of stockpile an all-star team. And here are the documents that you have to show to the Little League officials. You got to show a copy. You have to show a copy of a valid driver's license, a copy of valid vehicle registration. This is in New York. A copy of your New York State insurance ID card, and it's got to be between specific dates. I mean, the vehicle registration's got to be dated between February 1 of 2012 and February 1 of 2013. So it's not just a vehicle registration card. It has to be within certain calendar parameters. And then you have to bring a copy of your tax bill, your cable bill, or your pay stub to prove that you live where you say you live. So you think about that. I mean, it's harder to be eligible for a Little League All-Star team than it is to vote or to become an American citizen. It's tougher to be eligible, to prove eligibility to play Little League than to prove eligibility for food stamps or for welfare. So all of that is going on. What's that, Rob? Yeah, or President of the United States, for that matter. Now, one other thing, I want to play an audio bite. Jeff grabbed this. This is audio bite A6. Now, Alan Grayson, you might have remember him. He's a total chucklehead. He's a Democrat, and he was voted out of office 2 years ago, but he was voted back into office this year. They had some redistricting. He ran in a different district than he represented before, and he won. So he's back in Congress. And I normally wouldn't be able to make any use of anything that Alan Grayson would have to say because he's so far left in his policies. But here he is talking to the Inspector General, Elizabeth Coleman, of the Federal Reserve. This is the Inspector General. She doesn't work for the Federal Reserve. She's supposed to be independent. She is the inspector. So she's supposed to, what is an inspector supposed to do? An inspector is supposed to inspect. And she's an inspector general. That means she's in charge. She can look at anything she wants to. The whole idea between these inspector generals is you have somebody that's not a political animal. They're not elected. They're independent. And their job is to be a watchdog over that agency to make sure that they're crossing their T's and dotting their I's. So Alan Grayson is talking to the Inspector General, and listen to this. There is $9 trillion missing from the Federal Reserve. $9 trillion. And Alan Grayson wants to know where that money is. Who's got it? Where's the paper trail for that $9 trillion? So here's how his conversation with the Inspector General of the Federal Reserve went. Let's listen.
I'm asking you if your agency has, in fact, according to Bloomberg, extended $9 trillion in credit, which, by the way, works out to $30,000 for every single man, woman, and child in this country. I'd like to know, if you're not responsible for investigating that, who is?
We have responsibility for the Federal Reserve's programs and operations, audits, to conduct audits and investigations in that area. In terms of who's responsible for investigating, would you mind repeating the question one more time?
What have you done to investigate the off-balance sheet transactions conducted by the Federal Reserve, which, according to Bloomberg, now total $9 trillion in the last 8 months?
I'll have to look specifically at that Bloomberg article. I don't know if I have actually seen that particular one.
That's not the point. The question is, have you done any investigation or auditing of off-balance sheet transactions conducted by the Federal Reserve?
At this point, we're conducting our lending facility project at a fairly high level and have not gotten to a specific level of detail to really be in a position to respond to your question.
Oh, man. So Alan Grayson, and I give him credit, he's a Democrat. Normally, he would love the fact that $9 trillion is floating around the government somewhere completely unaccounted for. But he asked the Inspector General, where is this money? Where did it go? Who's got it? It's $9 trillion that the Federal Reserve has loaned out. Who's got it? And she basically says, I have absolutely no idea. I don't have one scintilla of a notion about where that $9 trillion. This is $9 trillion, ladies and gentlemen. Our entire federal debt is only $16.5 trillion. This is over 50% of what already we owe, and we have no idea where this money is, and the Inspector General cannot answer that question for us. Now, one quick soundbite let's wedge in before the bottom of the segment, Rob. Clip number 3. President Obama was over in Germany today giving a speech at the Brandenburg Gate where he spoke in 2008. Now, remember, in 2008, there were 200,000 people that turned out for President Obama's speech. 200,000. You know how many showed up today? 6,000. Went from 200,000 in 2008 to 6,000 today. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, the thrill is gone, gone, gone. And you think about the great speeches in Berlin. JFK, Ich bin ein Berliner, which could be translated, by the way, I am a jelly donut. Apparently that's not what it said if you really know German, but it could be translated that way. So JFK, Ich bin ein Berliner, resonates through time. Ronald Reagan, tear down this wall. That resonates through time. And then you've got Barack Obama talking about climate change. So he gets up and says, hey, drive a coal-fueled car. It was a bomb of a speech, totally bombed, no energy, no passion. And Chris Matthews, clip 3, he's already making excuses for the fact that President Obama's speech was a total, absolute bust.
Active glass, Chris, what is that? What is that?
Well, I think a lot of the problem he had today was the late afternoon sun in Berlin, I think, ruined his use of the teleprompters. And so his usual dramatic wind-up was ruined. I think he was really struggling with the text there.
Oh, man. So it's all the sun's fault. Couldn't blame that one on Bush, but you can blame it on the sun. Focal Point AFR Talk, back in 2. Stay with us.